Well, good morning and welcome to worship today. What a joy to be in the house of the Lord together and to celebrate His goodness and grace. We are wrapping up a series that we've been in for the last 3 weeks called How to Be Rich. Now, we're not been teaching about how to get rich because you can get a lot of that teaching elsewhere. You can go to Barnes & Nobles and pick up several sets of volumes on how to get rich and how to make money. But the question is how do we be rich in a way that honors God? How do we live with the resources that God has given us in a way that honors Him and actually multiplies the blessings that He makes available for us? In week number 1, I shared with you that there was some good news and some bad news. Do you remember what that was? The good news is that we're rich. And that's really good news because you think about it, we are so blessed. Look at all that we have and all that we can do and the options that are before us. And yet, part of that is to understand that if we make literally over $37,000 a year, and many of you do that, we are in the top 1% of wage earners in the entire world. And the truth is, the majority of the world would love to have your problems. You think about all that you struggle with and all that you get frustrated over, and you think the majority of the world would love to have the problems that you have. Think about it this way for a moment. How many of you have an ice maker in your refrigerator? You make your refrigerator makes ice, or you have it in the door. Good. So a lot of you. Have you ever seen one of these before? I mean, what happens when your ice maker breaks? It's terrible. I mean, it's like a crisis comes about it, and you have to get one of these, and this is an ice, I don't even know what they call this anymore. An ice tray. And you take it over and you fill it up at the faucet and you put water in it. It kind of spills over the side and you carry it to the freezer and you stick it in the freezer. And after some time, after literally hours and days and months and years, it freezes. And then you get it out when you want ice, and you take it over, and then you have to bend it, and you really have to work hard. I mean, it's hard on the back. I mean, it's strenuous. And sometimes what happens is these things get brittle and they crack. And then when you do break them, it gets it catches your fingers, and it's hard, isn't it? This is a rich person's problem. It's a rich person's problem. How many of you know what this is? How many of you have dishwashers? How many have your dishwashers? See, there's a vast majority have dishwashers. You know, what if your dishwasher breaks? I mean, what a pain. You have to go get something like this, and these are nasty. They're sponges, and you have to wash dishes with it, and it gets food particles in it, and it never gets really clean, and you think you're using it over and over again, and it's just, it's sick. And then, you do it, you wipe the counter off, and you spread all the, and then you get something like this. Dish towel. And then it doesn't dry them for you in the dishwasher anymore. You become the dishwasher, and then you put it in the strainer on the side of the cabinet, and so when people come over, they see what you've been doing, and it's all over the countertop, and it's pretty unsightly. And can I tell you, this is a rich person's problem? How many of you have washers and dryers? Washers and dryers. Isn't it terrible when your dryer breaks? Have you ever had your dryer break on you? It's gone out. No, I've worked on yours. I've worked on mine. It's gone out. How many of you know what this is? See, what you do is you just put them all over your clothes. No, you don't. You take these and you put your clothes, you hang them over the railing of your porch. You pull out these wet clothes, you're just dripping all over the floor, and you take them outside, and you hang them over a fence, and then your neighbors see all your underwear. I mean, it's really embarrassing, isn't it? Or you hang them, and some of you have the old-fashioned clothesline, and you hook these on them to dry your clothes. Sometimes you just... you wring them out, and they don't look quite the same as they do when they come out of a dryer, and you've got one of those dryer sheets in there because it's hard to use a dryer sheet on the railing of the porch. It doesn't quite make a difference. And so, you have an option. You can kind of hang them there. You can hang them up on the line. You can wear them damp. Have you ever done that? You take them out of the washing machine. You just, well, okay, I'll just put them on wet because they'll dry out in a few hours. I mean, you know. Or how many of you ever have done this terrible thing? You've actually taken your wet clothes and stuck them in your microwave. Yeah, some of you are not admitting it, are you? But people will do all kinds of things. Can I tell you, those are rich people problems? The truth is, the good news is, we are rich. And we are so blessed because God tells us that we can enjoy the things that we have. We can enjoy the way that He's blessed us. And yet also there's some responsibility there, because the good news is He says that we can use our wealth and our riches to make a difference in the lives of others. We also talked about another thing, and that was that there's also bad news. And the bad news is we're rich. You think, well, how can it be good news and bad news? And yet the other side of it is that often riches are deceitful. Wealth is deceitful, and we can get so wrapped up in our money, in our wealth, in our possessions that we misorder our priorities in life. All of a sudden, we're focused on the wrong things, and God gets pushed to the side, and this possession or this money becomes the forefront of our lives and becomes the focus of what we're all about. And the truth is, wealth is deceitful. Matter of fact, Jesus said it this way in Luke chapter 18. He says, how hard it is for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. It's not hard in the sense that money's bad, but it's the love of money that weakens us and draws us away from God. And isn't it amazing how we can go from gratitude to greed in just a matter of minutes, or maybe even seconds? Oh, God, I'm so thankful for what you've done for me. Ooh, I like that pickup truck. Or, wow, you've got a house like that? Oh, you bought new clothes? Oh, those are nice. That's that jewelry, or that phone, or that. All of a sudden we go from gratitude to greed in a matter of seconds. And the bad news is this, is that being rich often becomes one of the greatest spiritual challenges that we ever face. It becomes one of the most challenging spiritual hindrances that we can do. And the other bad news is this, is that to whom much is given, much is required. When God has blessed you and endowed you with certain abilities and talents and wealth, then there's a responsibility. There's a greater accountability for that. We are to step up and allow God to use that in new ways. Have you ever thought about this phrase, money changes people? Have you ever thought about that? Money changes people. I saw an interesting article. It was on the computer on MSN, and it's about Wild Willie. Wild Willie wants his life back. September the 20th, the GMC pickup truck he bought and the winnings from the Powerball jackpot he shared in August. He's being interviewed by Tony Dokapil. Wild Willie of Sealy, Manahawkin, New Jersey, has one piece of advice for the winner of last week's $400 million Powerball pot in South Carolina. Run. Just disappear, he said. Speaking from hard-won experience, get lost while you can. And then he goes on and talks about how money is going to run your life. He says, I had relatives coming out of the woodwork I never even knew I had. I had people selling me stuff and wanting stuff. I had the government come and wanting their share. And he said, my whole life got turned upside down. All of a sudden, I'm a celebrity. I'm the Good Morning America show. And I'm with all these people I don't even like. He says, I just want to go hunt. And I just want to go fish. I just wish I could just go back to my old house and my trailer. Money changes people. But have you ever thought about this? Or maybe have you ever said, money changes me? You know, it's easy to say how money changes Willie and money changes everybody else, but to come back and say, money changes me. That when I have it, when it's in my possession, all of a sudden it does something different for me. Typically, for most people, money changes them not necessarily for the good, but for the worse. They become more selfish. They become more inward, more self-absorbed. They've got to have all of this stuff. They even become rude. They become arrogant. It changes them. And we learned that last week and the week before, we learned that actually people who make more money give less money. that the more money you make, the less charitable you are because you just seem you can't earn it. I had somebody give me a little quote last week, and I thought this was kind of cute. And it's called, "Years ago, a man knelt with his pastor and prayed as he committed himself to God to tithe. His first week's pay was $10, and his tithe was $1. As he grew older, he became prosperous, and his tithe was $7.50 a week, and then it was $10. He moved to another city, and his tithe was soon $100 a week, and then $200, and then $500. He sent his old pastor a telegram and said, 'Come to see me. I need to talk with you.' The pastor arrived at the home, the beautiful home of the man. They had a good time talking over old times. Finally, the man came to the point. 'Do you remember the promise that I made years ago to tithe? How can I get released from that promise? When I made that promise, I only had to give $1. Now it's $500 a week. I can't afford to give away money like that.' The pastor looked at his friend and said, 'Well, I'm afraid we cannot get released from this promise. But there is something we can do. We can kneel and ask God to shrink your income so you can afford $1 a week.'" Isn't that funny? When we got little, we can give much, but when we got much, we can give. Seems like we can only give little. But for those who are close to Christ and are saying that money is not the primary focus of my life, and yes, it's wonderful, and yes, I can use it, and God blesses me with it, but I can make it work for me instead of me working for it. All of a sudden, money changes us for good. We become generous. We become giving. We have this divine sense of responsibility. I had a dear friend and had a little sign on his desk, and it's that simple phrase, "To whom much was given, much is required." And he told me one time that because God had blessed him so much, he sensed a divine responsibility to be a blessing to others. I thought, wow, what a Christian witness. What a joy that money changes us. It changes me. Here's a key point I want to talk to you about as we kind of wrap up this series and then go a different direction this next week. The key part is this, is that God is testing you when it comes to money, when it comes to things, that God gives us things and puts things along our way to test us, to strengthen us, to challenge us, and to see if we're capable of not only handling the small stuff, but can we handle the big stuff as well? Are we going to be faithful with the little bit that God gives us so that He can actually give us true riches and true blessing? Jesus talked about this test when He was telling a parable. He gave this parable in Luke chapter 16, and He was talking to all the people, and He said this. He said, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can be trusted with very much. And whoever is dishonest with little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy with what? Handling worldly wealth." And He asked them a question. How will God trust you with true riches? In other words, will you pass the test of prosperity? Will you pass the test that God puts before you, or will you be seduced by the stuff and the things and all of these issues that can draw us away from our priority of making God first? Will you pass the test of priority? Because the truth is, most people don't. I want to talk to you about how to pass the test, but before I talk about how to pass it, I want to talk to you about how to fail the test. How do you fail the test of prosperity? Because if you can pass it, then you can fail it. And I want us to look at a story that Jesus told specifically on how to fail the test. This is amazing. If you'll take your Bible, and I hope you've got it with you, look over in Luke chapter 12, starting at verse 16. And this is a parable that Jesus told about the test that He gives to each one of us. And it's a powerful story, and I hope that you'll allow the Holy Spirit to bring it to light to you today. How to fail the test of prosperity. Luke 12:16, Jesus said this. He says, "The ground of a certain man," and that can include us, "a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, 'What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops.' Then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And then I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, self, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Drink, eat, drink, be merry. What he's basically saying is this in our language. He's saying, I just fulfilled the American dream. I mean, I made it to the top of the heap. I have arrived. I'm here. This is wonderful. I've got enough. Matter of fact, I've got more than I need. I got a nice house. I got a nice car. I got all the possessions. I can go out and buy anything I want to buy. I can do anything I want to do. Matter of fact, if I don't want to work, I don't have to. I'm there. I've arrived. I'm going to say to myself, eat, drink, and be merry, because I can do what I want to, because I have all this stuff. What Jesus is showing us is how to fail the test of prosperity. And the question is, well, how do we fail it? What is Jesus trying to say in this parable? Because it's so easy to kind of get off track of what he's saying here, but what is he saying? I believe he's saying this if you're taking notes. What we do is this: we believe that what we have is for us. We believe that when God gives more, that more is always for me. That's how we fail. God gives us more, and the more is for me. The more is for my use, for my indulgence. For example, think about this. Here's how much money you make, and here's how much you spend. And typically, I was a kid when I heard other people say your expenditures always rise to meet the level of your income. Isn't it amazing? And so what God does is you're making this much and you're spending this much, and so you say, God, help me, bless me, help me do better. And so God blesses you and you make a little bit more. But what do? You spend more. And so you make a little bit more and you spend more. And you make a little bit more, and what happens is there's a difference between where you were and where you end up, and we call that margin. And what we think is this, is that, oh, this is wonderful. Look at this tax return, or look at this bonus. Look what I can do. Now we can finally remodel the kitchen. Now I can buy that car. Now we can go on that trip. And we think that this is, God gave us more, and it's always for me. And one of the ways you fail the test, you look at this guy and you look at what he did. God gives us the margin, and we consume it all, and we absorb all of the margin, and we think that the more is for us. The guy says, I can use it, I can store it, I can save it, I can spend it, I can keep it because it's all for me. And look at this next verse 20. He goes on and he says this. But he said to him, you fool. He's literally saying, you've missed the whole point. You've missed the whole reason I blessed you. God says, this very night, your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you've prepared for yourself? And then Jesus kind of summarizes it in verse 21. He says, this is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for who? For himself. But is not what? Rich toward God. This is how you fail the test of prosperity. This is how it will be for those who think that everything that they have or given or achieve is for them. But let me show you something that I hope you will hear before you kind of check out here. Think about this. What did this guy do for a living in the story? He was a farmer. He was a farmer. And I know this seems to be a little silly question, but who is it that made him rich? It's not a trick question. Who is it that made him rich? God did. Who is it that made the rain rain? God. Who is it that made the crops grow? Who is it that did all of the things that made the sun shine? God did. God made this man rich. So it wasn't that God was saying, don't be rich, be poor. We get this idea sometimes in the church and Christianity, we'll sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and go on. But then who funds the ministries? Who funds the expansion and the blessings of others? There's two sides. God calls some people to poverty, and He calls some other people to be a blessing to fund those people who are living in poverty. Understand that. But it's God who blessed him and encouraged him. And what happens is here's this guy, and God blesses this guy, but He calls him a fool because he missed the whole point of who made him rich. God gave him a great year. And when you're a farmer and everything goes well and you don't have bugs and you don't get rained out and you got plenty of rain, but you don't have too much rain, you have a good crop. But what happens when you have a bumper crop? When you're going, it's amazing. I never planned on this. And see, God was not angry with him because he was rich. God made him rich. And it's not, He called him a fool because of this. Listen to this. He called the man a fool because he did not know how to be rich. You see, God makes us rich, and we say that, oh, no, it was really me. I did this. I mean, it was my education that brought me to this place. It's my good looks, or it's my ability, or it's my ability to work with people. That's the reason I am where I am. And we forget, no. We wouldn't be there if God did not bless us and empower us and make us able to do those things. But we think it's all about us. I did this myself. Why do I need God? Look what I can do. And God made you good. So God is not angry when you do well. God is not angry when you prosper. God is not angry when things around you are exponential. But He says this, when there are times that God blesses you and we think it's all for us, God says you're missing the point. You guys are missing the point. You thought it was all for you, but I gave you more because I expect more. And when I gave you more, you consumed it all yourself. Then you're failing the test of prosperity. That's not how to be rich. That's how to be selfish. Our key scripture that we looked at starting the very first week is what we've been looking at each week as we've gone along. And it's out of 1 Timothy chapter 6. And Paul is writing to Timothy, and he says, Timothy, you're going to meet some rich people. And rich people have a little different standard when they've got it. And the truth is, everybody's rich compared to somebody else. And there's some things that I need you to say to them. And he goes on, he says, command those who are rich in this present world. That's you and that's me. Not to be arrogant, not to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. See, wealth is deceitful. We think we get security, and then what do you do when somebody gets sick? What do you do when the storm comes through and destroys your home? Or what do you do when the plant closes down? Or all of a sudden the 401k tanks and bottoms out. What do you do? We thought we had all this security. He says, be careful, it's so uncertain, but put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. That's fascinating, isn't it? Now, you're just saying God gives us margin, not just for us, but for others. But He says that there's parts of what God gives us is so we can be blessed. God loves to bless people. But then He goes on, He says, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. Tell these rich people to be good in deeds, to do good things, to be generous, to be willing to share. And then when they're rich like this, he goes on and he says this, in this way they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life as what? That is truly life. Not fake life, not settling for an imitation, but experiencing the best of what I have to offer, says God. That's how to be truly rich. We've been sharing some statements each week, and I want to just review those with you for a moment. God has blessed me with more than I need. I'm rich. Say that with me, would you? God has blessed me with more than I need. I'm rich. And then the second week we looked at this. But I will not trust in riches, but in Him who richly provides. Say that with me. But I will not trust in riches, but in Him who richly provides. And then last week we looked at this phrase, because I have more, I will give more. Say that with me. Because I have more, I will give more. Because God blesses me more, the margin right here is not all for me. That I realize God blesses me, that yeah, I can use part of it, but am I to use all of it? Or does God have a bigger purpose for what He's blessed me with than what I'm experiencing right now? And this is our statement for this week. It's very simple, but it wraps it all up. Because I have more, I will give more and do more. Say that. Because I have more, I will give more and do more. Yeah, I'm thrilled at the number of people that have been come up to me the last several weeks and go, Pastor, these messages have been kind of rattling my cage. I mean, they've been just really challenging me on what I've been doing, and I've been seeing that I've been living way above my margin. I've been kind of buying more than what I can afford, and I've been living beyond my means, and I want to be rich in a way that honors God. I heard somebody say that to me this week. I want to be rich in a way that honors God. The question is, how do I do that? How do I live that life? I'd like to do more, but I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so upside down in my expenses. I'm so upside down in life. And it's just, sometimes it's hard just even to make it to church because of all the responsibilities I have. What I want to do is help you apply what we've been looking at these last several weeks in your life, no matter where you are, to say, God, how can we be faithful to where you've called us to be? And I want to share with you a biblical principle in life that I believe it will revolutionize your life if you'll take hold of it. And it's simply this. Write this down. How do we give more and do more? We do it by creating margin in life and ask God to use it. That when God blesses us, instead of rising with our expenditures and all the stuff that we're doing, we say, okay, God, why did you bless me? What do you want to do here that will be a blessing and that you want to use and you want to change? We're going to create margin in our life and ask God to use it. Look at Proverbs chapter 21:20. And it speaks directly to this margin. It says this, in the house of the wise, we have stores of choice food and oil. In other words, we have margin. We have a break here. But then he goes on, he says, but a fool devours all that he has. So in the house of the wise, there's margin, but in the house of the fool, they're upside down. The house of the wise, they've got choice food and oils, but the house of the fool, they have the stuff, but they don't have anything else, and they're just barely making it because they're consuming everything and they're absorbing everything because they think it's all for them. Now, what breaks my heart as I'm sharing these messages with you over these weeks and even after today, and we're going to move a different direction, and you're going to go, praise the Lord, we're not going to talk about money anymore. Great. Well, at least for a few weeks, we won't. What breaks my heart is that many of you do not feel you are rich. You just go, Pastor, it's just a great sermon series, and it's just some ideas you're sharing with me, but the truth is, I really don't believe it. And you'll leave these 4 messages, and nothing's going to change in your life except for you to continue where you are, consuming and absorbing. And the reason you don't believe you're rich is you don't feel rich. And the reason you don't feel rich is because you consume everything that God has given you, instead of saying, what can I do that will bless you? And though you make a ton compared to other people in the world, you're stressed out. I mean, I'm there. I get there all the time. I have to step back and go, whoa, what's here? What's this margin for? Or I got to change, my house payment went up, or the car situation changed, or I got to replace the car. All of a sudden the margin, but then I've prepared. It was so cool talking this week to one of our families in our church, and they had a crisis in their home. Had a crisis in family, had to go out of town for several weeks. And they said, you know what was, Pastor, what was so amazing with that is we didn't take anything out of our checking account and our savings account. We took it all out of our reserve account because we had put money back knowing that someday we might need it. And we were able to use that margin, and it did not change our lifestyle one bit. And they're very generous. They give. They're involved in blessing others. And the challenge that we face is we get into this lie, we buy into this deception that says if I had more, I'd be happier. If I had more, I would feel secure. And the challenge with that is we're asking our possessions and our money and our stuff to do what only God can do. And so we never find ourselves secure. We never find ourselves happy. And I'm not trying to be hard on you. I'm trying to look in the mirror and be hard on myself. I was in the store last night picking up some things for an elderly gentleman I take care of, Ira, 91 years old, and I was buying some things for him, and I was walking down an aisle, and I saw something go, ooh, that would be fun to have. No, I don't need that. Then I walked down another aisle in Walmart, and ooh, that would be nice to have. No, I don't need that either. And I walked out of that store. I was so proud of myself. I didn't spend any extra money than what I was supposed to spend. Matter of fact, I didn't get anything for me. And I thought, that feels pretty good. I better do that because I'm preaching about it tomorrow. I'd hate to walk out and say, ooh, look at I've got to pay that, Hi ho, it's off to work I go kind of a thing. But the truth is God gives us margin and we consume it, but God can use people better when we create margin. You're saying, well, how come God doesn't use me? You come to church and we tell you about a need, we tell you about a missionary, we tell you about an opportunity, and you're going, wow, I'd love to help, but I can't help. I'm so stressed out. Pastor, I'd love to, but I can't squeeze it in. And we do that with our money, but we also do that with our time, don't we? Oh, I know you need help. I know that part of my responsibility being a part of a church and being a part of a body of Christ is I'm supposed to be a part. But Pastor, the truth is, I'm so active with all of our kids' activities, and we're just going every night of the week, and we don't have time for God. We don't have time to, I'm so tied up in work, and I'm in knots all the time, and I just need to come and relax and invest in other people. I'm so over the edge, I don't have any margin. And I think about so many people, me and you and all of us, that we're just living right there. We're just living right there. Just about, if something would happen, if something devastating would come along, we would be gone. We'd be sunk because we've created no margin in our life. And when God does say, you know what? You need to give. You need to be a part of this. You need to support what's happening here. You need to help that family. You need to help that missionary. You need to provide for that pastor. And you're going, well, I wish I could, but I've eaten it all. Like God's pie, we talked about that. God, I know I'm supposed to give you the first tenth of my pie, but you know what? It was so tasty, I went ahead and ate that for myself. I know, God. Next time, God, you're God. You won't miss my little bit. And we miss the whole point. Is that God doesn't give us the margin so we can say, "Oh, God, look what I'm doing for you." You need some help in the church. Yeah, I can do it because I'm so good. But we do it because it's our obedience to say, I'm not going to allow anything else to be first in my life except for you, God. I'm going to create margin, and I'm going to allow God to use it. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do to change our lives? What can we do? Just think financially. What is it that we can do? I'm going to tell you something revolutionary, and it's on your outline today. This is revolutionary. This will change your life. You're going to say, Pastor, this is the brightest thing you've ever said in your life. What do? The first one is this. You make more. You make more. You say, God, help me do better in my work, do better in my life. I need a promotion, or you just make more. You go out and get a second job. You do what you got to do. You make a little bit more. Now, this is what's going to blow your mind right here. Here's the other key. There's two sides. One is you make more, but if you don't make more, or if you do make more, here's the second. This is revolutionary. And listen to this. I'm going to say it real slow. Spend less. Spend less. Did you get that? There's two ways of taking care of this financial margin. One is you get more money. You make more money. But if you don't make more money, or you do make, the question is, you spend less. You don't buy that TV. You don't upgrade the car just yet. You don't remodel the kitchen just right now. You don't go on that trip and put it on the credit card right now. I mean, that's a revolutionary thought for so many people today. You mean it's free money? What do you mean? I can do anything. I just charge it. But then you pay 23% interest. And you end up paying more than you would have if you would have saved for it. What a revolutionary concept. Save up the money before you go buy something. Oh, I know you're going to hate me for that. Oh, it's terrible. How do we create margin? We make more or we spend less. We don't get sucked into what everybody thinks we need to do. We don't get sucked into what our society says. Well, you've got to live here, or you've got to drive this, or you've got to look this way. You've got to have that bigger and that better and that more advanced. You step back and go, well, you know, that's okay to have that, but did I get there because I've got margin, or did I get there because I owe? It's off to work I go. Did I get there because God has blessed me and I've created margin, or did I get there because... Do you know what's crazy is this? Think about this. Is most of the stuff we get frustrated about and we've got to have did not even exist 5 to 10 years ago. I mean, it blows my mind. When I think about that, I almost brought up a rotary telephone to see if anybody knew what it was. Or I've got a typewriter in the closet. I wondered how many of you would even remember what that was and how to do it. I hated typewriters. Had to type all my papers in college, and halfway through my seminary career, I got an Osborne computer, and it had a 7.5-inch screen on it, had 2 floppy drives, 128K. Man, I was cooking. Had used WordStar. I had to type in Control-Alt-128 to turn on the bold, and then I had to do Control-Alt-129 to turn off the bold. And when you looked on the screen, you had all these codes in with the text. And I'm going to tell you what, it revolutionized my life. It cut my paper writing down to a third, and it was amazing. But we look back and go, that is so antiquated. And yet back then you go, this is amazing. Do you know, in your cell phone, there's more power and computer ability in your cell phone than in Apollo 13. The entire Apollo 13 in your cell phone. And that's not even in a smartphone. But we've got to have this stuff. How do we create margin? We make more, we spend less. Or how do we create margin in our schedule? We do less. Instead of booking up every moment, instead of using every Saturday for ourselves and every day for something that we've got to do, we come back and say, God, what do you want to do with this? I'm going to create some margin here. And I'm going to be wiser. I'm going to spend a little more time with my family. I want to have meals together. How long has it been since you had a meal at the table instead of in front of the TV? Or even as a couple? How long has it been since you've just gone out and done something together without spending money to do it? We think going out, having a good time is just going out to eat or going to a movie, and we never talk to each other the whole time we're there, do we? What do we have to do to create margin? How do we do it? And the question is, how do we do everything that we're required to do that it seems like everybody's putting on us? And the answer is this: you don't. You step back. You intentionally don't do what many people do. You limit the busyness of your life. You learn how to say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to spend some time together because my kids are young and they're not going to stay young forever. Or my teenagers are adolescent and they're not going to be home forever. Or the truth is we're together and we're not going to always have this time. I'm not going to always have this job. I'm not going to always have the flexibility to do what I can do now. And I create some margin. And when the opportunity comes up for service or being a blessing to others, you've created margin that you can do that. Oh, I can give in that offering, or I can help in that, or God, you want me to do that? Okay. I can do that because you've positioned me to do that. And then all of a sudden, I've put God first in my life. Oh, God, do you need me to volunteer in this area? Oh, that's so hard. I don't know if I have the time, but I've created time to be a part of what you've called me to do. So God has blessed us. God has blessed us with more than we need. We're rich. Paul's right there. Who's blessed us? God has blessed us. And we have two responses. One is we can be arrogant and we can be proud about what we've got, or we can say, God, this is yours and I want you to use it. Or we can be embarrassed about what God has given us and discount it instead of honoring Him with it. But I will not, but I will not, but I will not, but I will not, but I will. How big does your stack need to be until you really feel secure? A little bigger. And to step back and go, because the truth is, I'll never feel secure because only God can give that to me and God can create that in my life. And the same is with happiness. How much do I have to have and achieve before I'm happy? You never can, because only God brings happiness. But we're not going to trust in our riches, but in Him who richly provides. Why? Because we have more. We will give more. You know, it's fascinating, as I mentioned to you, when you study the lives of rich people give less than people who aren't as rich. The people who are wealthy don't give as much as the people who are struggling sometimes to get by. But we're going to be rich in a way that honors God, and we're going to say, God, here's my 10%, and here's my offerings, and when the opportunity rises, I've created margin in my life that I can give. And not only that, I can do more. And when I tithe and when I'm faithful to God, it stretches my faith. It shows me that it prioritizes my life for me of what's vital and what's important. And it stretches my faith because it shows me that I can learn how to live on 90% in which I used to consume 100%. And I find out that I can do more with the 90 than I could with the 100. We become radically extravagant, intentional givers. You see, God has blessed us with more than we need. We're rich. But we will not trust in our riches, but in Him who richly provides. Because we have more, we'll give more and do more. That's how to be rich. That's how God says, I want to leverage what you have for the kingdom and not just for you. Because you have such a limited time on this globe. So use it to affect the lives of others and be a blessing to the kingdom. Pray with me, would you?